On Prime Edition, we're focusing on the performance of youthful MPs. 1 year on, I'm hosting the Member of Parliament for Manyatta, the Honourable Gitonga Mukunji, and also Engineer Chrispus Wathimba, a governance expert, both of them to give us, what we will call an incisive look into the performance of the Members of Parliament. Both of you are very much welcome. Na karibuni sana. Probably to start off with you, Mheshimiwa Mukunji, because it's you on the weighing scale. How do you think, as Members of Parliament, youthful Members of Parliament, you've been able to perform for the last 1 year?
Well, thank you so much, JJ, for having me on the show today. And to our viewers, hi, wherever they are. First, my name is Gitonga Mukunji. I'm also the chairman, Kenya Young Parliamentarians, in the National Assembly and also Senate. And I'm very happy to be engaged in this conversation of seeing how the young parliamentarians are doing. Number one, it is not something you can answer directly because members always get into the house and focus in different fields. But maybe we can look at things such as participation in house business, which involves putting their voice heard in terms of the motions in place, the bills that are being discussed. And I want to report and say that however difficult it is for young members of parliament or first-timers to settle in, this time we have had young members of parliament settling very quickly and learning the ropes in a very swift way. And I will say that being one of the people who have been ranked by Mzalendo as among the most vocal, actually number one member, a young member who is the most vocal in terms of participating in house business. And also we have had motions that have been sponsored by young parliamentarians that are of serious importance to either the country or public interest. And a good example is we did a very interesting WorldCoin motion in the National Assembly that I sponsored, and it led into a commission of inquiry that involved bringing even the owners of WorldCoin in Kenya to exactly explain why they are disobeying our laws and doing things to our young people in promise of small coins. And at the same time, we have had motions from other members, such as motions on issue to do with health by Honorable Njeri Kirinyaga. We have had members coming in very vocally on issues of economy. And a good example is Honorable Salasia. He came out very strongly when issues of coffee was mentioned, and it led into what transformation.
You're talking about the guy who had no understanding about climate change.
He came out so strongly, and that led into the issues we are seeing in terms of transformation on issues to do with sugar sector today. And on top of that, the members have come up with very unique ideas, and I'll look at somebody like Honorable Kiborek from Baringo has come in to introduce things that were not in his constituency, including Huduma centers, and bringing all these things as a young member, 1 year in Parliament, where you are into this new field, is something I would say they have done.
All right. You talked about difficulty, and I'll come back to you to talk about the difficulty you're facing. But Engineer, do you think that assessment is correct? Can Kenyans feel the impact of youthful MPs in Parliament?
Well, we have two sets of youthful MPs. There are those who are serving their first term, and there are those who are actually serving their second term.
Very good.
And I'll give an example of Ndindi Nyoro and Kimani Kioria. Those are youthful MPs serving their second term who have demonstrated that once they are given the responsibility of leading the House, they are able to do that. Ndindi Nyoro is the chair of the appropriation, the budget committee, and Kimani Kioria is in charge of the finance bill. And they have delivered on their part. In as far as Kenya Kwanza plan is required, they've done their part. Then we have another set, which I believe you belong to, where you are new members into Parliament. you probably didn't have much experience in terms of public service, you've not had any much experience in the legislation, and the expectation is overwhelming on the ground on what you need to deliver. For me, I think what they lack is what was there in the other parliament. When we had the minority leader, Duale, who was a ranking member in parliament and was very much involved in mentoring young leaders or young parliamentarians into understanding how the business of parliament goes around. Unfortunately, right now, the young parliaments seem to be lost. They are doing things on their own. They don't have this kind of guidance from these ranking members of parliament to be able to tell them, this is how you carry out the business, this is how you create impact, both in the house and outside the house. So the issue, for example, of the world coin, that was a reaction of something that was happening outside the control of parliament. We want to see the members of parliament who are young aligning themselves with the Kenya Kwanza plan. For example, on the Hustler Fund, so on the other, on the housing levy, so on the social health sector. Those are areas where we can be able to create the value chain that the Kenya Kwanza is discussing, and it's the responsibility of the young parliamentarians to come up with an agenda within parliament and outside parliament to help the government of William Ruto advance that goal. And also, in the side of the opposition, the young members of parliament for the opposition, to check whatever Azimio had a plan, how can it fit into this administration? How can it work together with the administration, or how can they check the administration where it is failing?
Right.
So those are areas I think they need to work on in the second year of the administration.
You talked about difficulty, and engineer alludes that mentorship from ranking members and some of the things that you're lacking. Is that part of the difficulties you were alluding to when you were saying, despite the difficulties you're soldiering on?
Let me just describe our parliament today, Bona JJ. Number one, we don't have a house of 50 members. We have a house of more than 300 members of parliament. So it's not a house where we have opportunities to showcase everything that comes in and gives you an exposure. But I really agree with him that there is a need to always do a continuous mentorship. But I want to report to him that the young members have also planned themselves, and we have a very vibrant organization, Kenya Young Parliamentarian, that has been able to bring on board the members that are even senior members in the House for issues of mentorship. And we are not lost. And I would like to remove that thought of being lost. Let me tell you, if you rank and you look at a member of parliament that comes in and he is given the platform just like any other ranking member, is like getting old. When you're born, immediately you get to the old age. So it's a matter of learning the ropes as quick as possible and ensuring that you chip in. And I want to say, we have had a discussion as Kenya Young Parliamentarians. We have bills that we are coming up with that are actually very important for this country. It's only that this year has been very slow on what I would call individual-sponsored bills, because we have had a lot of house business, government business that involved a lot of changes in terms of the structure of leadership, and I think it's in the public domain. But I'm hoping this coming year we have time for individual members' bill that can be able to come to the final even stages of the House. And we have discussed issues to do with Kenya School of Law and diplomas being sheltered aside. We are coming to change that. We have put in bills that involve issues to do with our production and our youthful population that doesn't have jobs. We have all these bills in the pipeline, and we are doing it together with the support of the numbers that we have, because we already have numbers as young parliamentarians. Okay. We are also looking at issues that are touching on our young people in a unique way, such as sexual health, issues to do with our women. We are doing all these things, and we are coming up with bills that are going to even shock this nation, because we need to change this nation as well.
We'll come back to that in a bit. Yes. Engineer Wathimba, part of the accusation, and I think you've seen it flying around, is that young members of parliament have become the new version of JJ Kamoda. They are ogling too much to powers that be, and sometimes tend to forget about their legislative roles.
You see, one of the challenges we have is that political parties and owners of those political parties will a lot of power. And these young parliamentarians, having come to parliament, they believe that their only loyalty is not to the people, but to the party itself. And therefore, they must do whatever the party requires of them. And therefore, you find it's very rare to find a young parliamentarians siding or going against the desires of the party or the party leadership. And that is something which is going to be a challenge, because many of the things that Kenyans are having to disagree with the administration are things that even them as young parliamentarians may want to align with the common man, but because it's not the party position, they have no choice but to side with the party, because they fear you might be delisted as a member of parliament or disregistered as a member of the party, and consequently lose your member of parliament or leadership. So therefore, we have a challenge of deciding, is it the party or is it me as an elected member that I should be able to stand with?
Quite an interesting one. Rolling back to you, Mheshimiwa Mukunji,
Yes.
because you've said you have numbers as young parliamentarians.
Yes.
But do these numbers reflect in a bipartisan way? Have members of parliament, young parliamentarians, been able to transcend political and coalition lines to coalesce around a common agenda?
Well, let me say that we have had business in the House that has had split votes between opposition and also government. But I think this year, and I'm hoping this year is when we are going to have even issues to do with, such as what we have had in the dialogue committee coming to parliament. You'll find more of that, where young parliamentarians have a stand, and it is an independent stand. But the fact of the matter is, the few motions and bills that have come to the House that required such an alignment, they are bills that you can't really judge young parliamentarians with. And I'll tell you that, looking at maybe something to do with the finance bill, it transcended both sides. And you could find, because the government has sponsored that bill, there was no coercion whatsoever. But it is also something that you have to look at and see, let's give this government what it requires, and then we will see what will happen. Because if you don't give now, what will happen? And you will find yourself in an issue where the government is not helped in achieving its mandate. But in the bills that are coming to the House, such as including the formation of offices that we are expecting to be brought in the House, you will find a very independent opinion from young members. I will tell you something. I am in government, but I have been labeled as somebody who criticizes. Just the other day, I put Honorable Machogu on the hot seat because of the issue of KCPE, and I'm in government. Actually, the opposition was shocked that I'm the one who is sponsoring such a motion. So I want to say that, and this, I'm not speaking on my behalf, but of young members. It might not have been a year you could say it is a year to judge on the delivery of young members in terms of bipartisanism. But I will tell you that we do speak a language that transcends both opposition and government when it comes to agendas that I've mentioned that are coming to the House in this coming year.
Quite an interesting one, because I was seeing just the other day, one wing of the Kenya Young Parliamentarians Association called a meeting somewhere at night, and I don't know, resolved to remove one of their own because for some clandestine reason they think is compromised by the other side. And I was just wondering, Engineer Wathimba, have we seen really a semblance of transcending political differences to coalesce around a youth agenda?
You know, the challenge we have as a country, we've never arrived at a point where politics is about ideas and not personalities. And as I always said, as long as the top remains the same, the top leadership of political parties in Kenya is the same. William Ruto was in Kano in 2002 with Uhuru Kenyatta, while Raila was with Kibaki in 2002. And 21 years later, they are the same people leading politics in this country. Whereas we have young people who have come in and still not yet captured that power that can be able to drive or make decisions. So therefore, the politics of ideas has still not found place in Kenya. And that's where the challenge is. The day we will find relevance in terms of ideology and how we conduct our politics, then you'll find young people with unique ideas being able to advance those positions to a point where they become issues of national dialogues. But today, our national dialogue revolves around personalities. And that's where the problem is. Whatever Raila says today is more important than what Wanjiko may want to be addressed. Whatever Ruto says today is more important than what we want today. So that's where the challenge is. So young parliamentarians, for example, who were voted this year, will identify, for example, with the issue of university funding.
Yes.
But none of them came out strongly to say we have a challenge with this, we have a misunderstanding, for example. Not many young people understood this whole university funding issue. Many of us who have young people who are joining university were even struggling to explain to parents that this is the way the structure of this funding will be. Some of that money came in, I think, 2 or 3 weeks ago, whereas some people even never applied for that funding because they did not understand it. So we have a problem where government is doing its business the way it thinks fit. And members of parliament who are supposed to help communicate better, especially the young, are not helping the same government communicate. This is one challenge this government is struggling with, communicating whatever it wants to do. There are very few people in that government who know what they want to do, but very few are helping it to communicate. And the members of parliament, especially the young ones, who have the energy and the ability to voice those issues, are not there. I saw the deputy speaker struggling to say that in the parliament itself, she can identify a handful of members of parliament who participate. She mentioned of them. They are around 20. And in the opposition, for example, she mentioned the Honorable Nyakal, who is Nyikal,
yes,
who is very vocal on issues of health. On the side of the government, it was Kimani Gishungwa, obviously because my majority leader, and she could not motion more than 20 MPs, who she says, these ones I know participate in parliament actively. And that's where the challenge is. Even you saw the president struggling to communicate issues that definitely should be done either by parliament or his executive, which is a cabinet. But it is left to him to communicate. Well, whenever his deputy opens his mouth, he says the opposite. The prime secretary, different. So it becomes a challenge to understand where this government is going.
I would want to hear what Gitonga Mukunji's response is, because I mean, part of the crisis in government is a communication crisis, and I think you've seen it that way. That the president will come up with a beautiful policy, but then the communication or the import of it falls within the cracks. How are you being mentored within your party to communicate government policy?
Okay, well, JJ, I've put to task the party, especially the ruling party, in terms of its structures of young people and young parliamentarians. And judging from what we have seen even in South Africa, we have had the youth wing, and in other parties, including the Communist Party of China, there is a need to start the mentorship we are talking about in that level, so that it can be continuous. And I'm happy I've had proposals from the Secretary General talking of a school, some sort of a school to mentor young leaders. But let me just say that it is not as bad as my good brother here is trying to bring it up, because he is kind of bringing it like the young parliamentarians have achieved nothing. And I'm reporting from the inside that a lot has been achieved. And I am pretty sure that if you look at the statistics from Zalendo and these other organizations that rank, they will tell you a very different story. Because as of the most last data that was put up, young members of parliament actually yearn to speak in the House. But there is always some sort of issue to do with ranking members being given a priority. But somebody like myself have been able to surpass that, because when I get I raise my hand, I am normally given a chance to communicate. But there is a need to actually try to balance, and I know the speaker's headache is that, and also the fact that the House has so many members is also not something that you can ignore and say this is something that you can always say somebody and somebody will speak. But I will tell you that the best time to judge is when we have finished up with setting up government, put up structures in terms of policies, government policies, which we are almost through with because we have passed the health bill. A lot of young members really participated in the debate on the health bill. A lot of members participated on the issues to do with the finance bill and all. But the issue of education, as you've mentioned, and is something that also made me also see a problem, is these policies that have been passed, regulations, they did not come to the National Assembly. We had to do an adjournment motion to discuss why these things are being passed without the involvement of Parliament. So please don't judge the members of Parliament, especially the young ones. Actually, the problem is something that we need to deal with as a country. Because such things that affect the whole country should pass through Parliament. And it was clear, and the committee in charge has prepared a report. I know it will come, and we are going to debate that thing. And you're going to deal with it. Put it in the right place.
All right, Engineer Wathimba, 1 minute to make your last remarks as we wind up.
I'm happy that we have done 15 months of this government. I hope the Maandamano phase is behind us. We look forward to a process where members of Parliament and the Senate will be able to engage government, both supporting it and checking it. We don't want them just to say yes to everything. We want also to hear them checking the government where it fails. And I also want to ask this government, you are doing a very good job in terms of coming up with policies, but the challenge you have, not many Kenyans understand some of the ideas you have. You need to tone them down, you need to break them down into simple ways, and we also need to see value in terms of the legislation we put. For example, we have done Hustler Fund for 1 year. We need to see a story of young men and women who have come out of poverty from the Hustler Fund, and we're able to encourage others to follow the same.
All right, 30 seconds to make your last
remarks. Thank you. I'll just say that this country is a country that has very good laws and policies. But the challenge that we have to face is the issue of implementation of our policies, regulations, and laws. It's important for the government and any institutions that is involved to put more pressure on that. But as I wish the viewers Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, I want to say that expect more from the young parliamentarians. You're going to see us coming together in a bipartisan way in this coming year to defend the interests of the public, not of our bosses, but of the public. And that one I'm promising as the chair Kenya Young Parliamentarian.
Thank you very much. And of course, we wish all of you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Thank you very much.
God bless you. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. That's how we put a cap on Prime Edition. Thank you very much for watching. God bless you. Good night.